This is TWiT. We thank Nicole Lazzaro for being here. She's the founder of XEODesign. Companies go to her when it ain't working, when they need help, when they want ideas.
When the game's not fun.
Ooh. No one wants to play a game that's not fun.
Yeah.
We've all played them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's hard to make a game great.
It's hard. Yeah, making games is hard. Making fun is really hard.
Yeah, making fun is hard work.
Yeah.
Actually, that's an interesting question. Do they look like they're having fun, these people making these games, or do they feel like, oh, I'm in the salt mine?
Sometimes, yes. Well, it's hard fun at that point because, in a sense, like you can't push a button and save the princess, you can't push a button and win the Grand Prix.
Right.
You have to feel a little bit of, frustration first.
It's kind of like a game, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then when they get to the end and they make something great, their vision that they had for the game powered them through, and then they have something.
Right. Well, and it feels worthwhile, right? You want to climb that mountaintop, and then because you had to climb it, then that's what makes it.
Yeah, that's right. If you just push the button and the princess was saved, that's not a fun game.
That's not a fun game at all. Right?
So you and I'm going to frame this because it's more than just games. This is life in a way. This 4-leaf clover that you have, it's the 4 keys to fun, and by the way, thank you for the autograph on this. So talk about this. There's 4 kind of leaves on this clover. There's easy fun, hard fun, people fun, and serious fun. Does a game have to have all of this to be really good?
Basically, what we found in measuring emotion on people's faces is that people's favorite game experiences had at least 3 of the 4. And what they would do is within any play session, they would actually rotate between them.
So it's almost like you're driving around a clover leaf. You're going...
And then if you think about what narrative is with a classic 3-act structure, right? Beginning, middle, and end. This is a way that games actually vary the emotional state of the player, allow them to vary the emotional state of themselves just by moving between different types, different leaves on that clover.
So games often start with this part, curiosity, easy fun, right?
If you think of what games do is they basically offer novelty, they offer challenge, they offer friendship, and they offer meaning. So those are the basis of those four keys. Easy fun is curiosity. It's the hook that pulls you in, right? It's the exploration. It's the bubble wrap of game design, and it's all about exploration, role play, fantasy, and then. But then after a while, it's like, it's
that's too easy.
Dribbling a basketball, that's fun.
Yeah.
But then after a while, it's like, well, I want to do something more, right?
Yeah.
Something more. So then you have a goal. So basketball hoop, right? But a basketball hoop is, not, is not like, isn't like big right here in between us, right?
No, it's hard fun.
It's small and it's overhead.
Yeah.
And the reason why it's overhead is that it's, it's basically makes it harder, right? Challenging. So that's a hard fun. So you have a goal, an obstacle, the height and size, right? Backboard, strategy with the backboard, right? And then that, I gotta, sink that shot.
So you actually talk about 3 stages here. First, frustration.
Yeah.
Like it's hard. Like if you've ever tried to shoot a basketball the first time, frustrating. Yeah. How do they get it in there? Then the second step is something you call fiero. What is that?
Right. So basically, you want to. You basically are. You're trying to get that goal, and your frustration's building each time you fail.
Yeah.
But it's motivational because I really want to get it. I want to win.
The fire in your belly.
The fire in your belly. And so then when you finally do, after feeling so frustrated, you think about that. It's like,
I did it.
Like, So you get frustrated, and then you go, yes, I did it. And then you feel relief on the other side. So you think like difficulty on one axis and skill and time on the other. If it doesn't get harder over time, you're going to quit because you're bored.
But you don't want it to be too hard either.
Because you'll leave because you're too frustrated. So there's this zone. We built this on Csikszentmihalyi's model of flow, and within that zone, you want to be you want that play, the perfect balance of difficulty and skill.
Right.
The only way you get to fiero though is where you're pushing that upper limit. And then you win at that point. Like just at the point when you're about ready to throw your iPhone through the window, if you win at that point, that's when the arms punch the sky.
So when he talks about flow, he's talking about mostly athletes getting in the zone. We know about the zone. But do you think video games create flow too?
They absolutely do. So yeah, there's and each of the 4 keys has its own mechanics for types of flow.
Interesting.
So we've sort of done a tesseract to Csikszentmihalyi's model in the sense that these are 4 dimensions of play, 4 dimensions of what really makes games fun.
So we've got easy fun and hard fun, and I've played games with both of those. What else happens here?
Well, basically the feeling of fiero, it's a wonderful, full body emotion, hard fun. Yes, I won.
If when we do that functional MRI, there's gonna be lots of red.
Lots of stuff going. Yeah, lots of stuff going on. And then though with people fun, what's interesting is that, well, basically if you win in the context of friends, that's even more fun, right? That's even more. So communication, cooperation, the social dynamic.
That's something game designers have recently discovered, because most games until recently were single player.
Right, exactly. And then once you get into console gaming, it was really helpful. It was like the more fun was had on the couch than actually, in the game. You really were designing the experience on the couch, right?
That's right.
You're jostling your friends, or, calling out. There's more emotion in people fun than the other three combined. And people playing the same game in the same room have more emotion than people playing the same game in different rooms.
Because we're designed around people.
Yeah,
it's all about people.
But if you think about esports, it's got to be, kind of co-located or some way of a lot of social interaction in order to get the most out of a game experience. Because then you get those feelings of, well, first of all, laughter. That's the easy. If you hear laughter, you're getting some people fun. And then the feeling of friendship is super important, especially today when we're so disconnected with all of our devices.
Yeah. So this is amici, which is Italian for friends.
Yeah. So it's like the like button on Facebook. Why Facebook is so addictive, or even chat rooms are so addictive because you're chatting.
And then
with
amusement, that's the laughter, right? Mm-hmm. You call it amiero, which is the friendship that develops between them. And then finally, admiration.
Right. Yeah. So you might admire someone. You might feel nachas. If someone who helps.
We got a little Italian and a little Yiddish.
if someone you help succeeds, right? And then you can also cavil about their. So in Mario Kart you have two, slots, and you can have someone.
English doesn't really have the words for some of these things.
Yes, Italian has a lot.
Italian
and Yiddish.
It's the languages of passion.
That's right.
That have these words. I love that.
And I think that and then I think we can't move on without Schadenfreude.
Yes, the shameful joy taken in others' misfortune.
Misfortune, right? Yes, and I have some friends in Sweden that say "skuldglädje," which is
same thing.
Schadenfreude in Swedish is the only emotion, true emotion.
That's why Swedes are so depressed, huh? That's interesting. So they'll build Schadenfreude in these games?
There's definitely Schadenfreude. Clash of Clans.
Yeah.
That's about revenge. That's a game about revenge. That's it.
That's a very addictive game.
Yeah. And
it's not just these A-list games. It's also casual games.
It's also casual games. Absolutely. Yeah. It's any kind of game.
They all have to have that.
Some of these emotions work. And what I want to say is that what's interesting is that if you move the high performing games, people's favorite games, move them around an emotional map. So it's not just
one feeling.
One thing.
Yeah.
It's not just put a quarter in and pull the slot machine,
worst,
right? It's not just that loop.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot healthier because you're developing social relationships with people.
Sure.
Fun. You're de-stressing with easy fun. You're relaxing. Hard fun.
What's the serious fun here?
Yeah, so this is really interesting, and we can talk a little bit about how actually the evolution of games has, over the past 10 years since the models come out, has traveled this. But serious fun is all about the result and creating value. People love how games change either themselves, like their brain state, or might change their real world. And the idea is that behind hard fun, when you see that Fiero, it's like, yes, I got it. But then the emotion kind of goes away.
Yeah.
And so what games often do is they'll build in mechanics to extend that emotion over time, that extend and enhance that feeling of accomplishment. So what was the result of play? And if there was a result of play, then it feels less like a waste of time.
Interesting.
So if you think about what drove so many people to Minecraft, those YouTube videos, you made something.
Yeah.
And there's a serious, it's there, right?
You bet.
And then you could, show that. Or if you're streaming your game in Fortnight, you've got something that other people can watch. And then if you have other people can watch that, then you have serious fun and people fun together. And what we find is that when we've got both of those together, when you have more than one key going, then there's even more enjoyment.
You could get this chart at XEODesign's website, XEODesign.com/whyweplaygames. .html if you want to take a look at that. It's interesting because this research you did 15 years ago, it really holds up. Although I have to say 15 years ago, games were not this good.
They were, we were basically it was,
They were the first two leaves, maybe, right?
Maybe, yeah, we were mostly focused on hard fun,
Yeah.
and that was in the language of games. And I got some friends, were sort of laughing at me about like, well, why don't we listen to players and like ask them like what they liked or watch and see what they liked?
Right.
And these were who I admire. Many of my heroes in the industry were like, no, we'll have the emotions of the arena, but Coliseum, but no other emotions. Like,
how interesting.
I knew that I'd already seen that in my lab, working on games like Myst, for example.
Yeah.
So I did these 2 years of research to tease apart like what it was. And so we basically came out with, easy fun. We came out with the model. And if you think about what happened with the industry is that we obviously continue to have hard fun.
You were completely right. The industry proved you right.
Yeah.
Hard fun and easy fun we had, but they added people fun and.
Well, if you remember, do you remember the launch of we had the Xbox, we had the launch of the PlayStation,
yeah,
and then we had the launch of a third console, the next generation,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Which was we had Nintendo, right, and then we had the Nintendo Wii,
right.
The Nintendo Wii with its little Wiimote was totally easy fun.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And that swept the
Sure
swept the
did.
map for that first year
Yeah.
of any hard fun that came out of stuff with 10 times the graphic processing power, because the easy fun and people fun in the Nintendo Wii were so strong.
But it didn't last.
It didn't last because there wasn't enough
hard fun.
But then we had some other things that came out, which was kind of interesting. So we had, you could argue whether or not these are games. Lots of people I'm sure on the channel will be, but Farmville, right?
That's
80
a
million
game?
users.
Hell,
80
that's a
million
game.
users. That's all people fun.
Yeah. At Farmville spawned, and I mentioned Simpsons Tapped Out, but it spawned, and I was doing We Rule, and I'm totally addicted. And which was basically Farmville, right? Kind of with more mechanics.
Yeah.
And I remember my wife saying, "What are you doing every morning?" I said, "Well, I have to farm." And she said, "Why don't you knit a sweater? At least you'd have something at the end of the day."
There you go.
She mocked me, and she was right.
Well.
So then I found Simpsons Tapped Out.
Okay.
Same problem, right? It basically these are farming games essentially.
Right,
all
right.
of them.
It's the building phase for an RTS. So Mark Skaggs, who was the designer on lead designer for Farmville, he was on the Red Alert 2 series. So an RTS game, the building phase, that's what Farmville is. It's a simplified version of a building phase of an RTS game.
Real-time strategy, something like StarCraft, which is kind of the king of RTSs.
Exactly.
So, that makes sense. Just the building part, none of the conflict, none of the other stuff.
If you think about the conversation with your wife about the sweater,
yeah.
The sweater is all about now after you're done with your your activity, what do you got? And that's where serious fun comes in, and it's about the result of play. So it makes it feel like I
accomplished something.
That you accomplished something. The game was not a waste of time.
And one of the things on here, there's excitement. Okay.
Yep.
There's relaxation. Okay. Yep. But there's Zen focus. That's that flow that you're talking.
And that's a really weird thing that we saw. Yeah. Well, basically, we saw people playing these really hardcore shooter action games.
But it's meditative.
Well, and what was crazy, it was sort of like smoking in a sense, is that some people were in these really intense action games, and they were doing all this stuff flying at them, and they would get real excited, right?
Yeah,
makes sense. But then other people were playing these games, and then they had to, in order to focus, they had to block. They had lots of more stuff to block out all of this stuff, and they actually would get into a very Zen-like state, right? So you have some people going way out, just getting super excited, and they have other people just using all this stimulus to get total Zen focus.
And when you watch
totally fascinating.
Some of the masters of these games, Fortnite's a good example. In fact, this is why I always thought esports wouldn't make it, because when you're watching great players play, there's nothing going on. They're not that interesting because they're in that zone.
Well, they're in the zone, right? And you can still see micro expressions, though.
Yeah.
So if you know, and
if you
then
know what to look for,
if you know what to look for. But then I think they did just what they did with professional sports on TV.
Yeah.
Is they changed the game a bit, and then they added color commentary.
Yeah, that's what makes it interesting.
And that's what makes it interesting.
If you watch a football player, there's not that much going on, but if you know the story, or the Olympics is a great example, where it's the story behind the athlete that makes that compelling.
And we really care about people, and these people are surrogates. They are. We have an empathetic connection with them.
That's right.
And so then there's this, and that's what moves us, because we experience their joy and their sorrow, but yet we're still not really participating in those spectator
things. So Fortnite's really interesting. Fortnite right now, I think, is the hottest game
Yeah,
out
pretty
there,
much.
pretty much. I talk to
yeah.
anybody I talk to, especially of a certain age. Like
And if your game
under
is
18.
not Fortnite, and if it doesn't have a battle royale, it's not Fortnite, it has a battle royale mode.
Even
right
Call of Duty's coming out with a battle royale version.
Exactly. Yeah.
So why is Fortnite so successful? What is it? Show us how it reflects these values.
Well, I think that what's going on is like we were talking earlier, is it uses the metaphor introduced by the Hunger Games.
If you said this before the show, but if the Hunger Games hadn't happened, we wouldn't know how to do a battle royale.
Right.
But we all saw that movie. Oh, now I understand. So that's always a challenge when you're doing something really new. People don't have a reference point. It's difficult to succeed. You have to have a reference point.
Absolutely, yeah. We found that, like with designing the first iPhone game, for example, is when you have this device, like what do you do that's unique? But you have to take a risk to do something unique, because they might as well just play your game on the PC, right? So you have to be unique and something new.
So you use the accelerometer and the motion.
So what we did is, I actually watched people play, stood in line to buy the first iPhone, and I was in that same line, so I did as well. And what we did was we noticed, like, wow, people really got into the fact that it oriented. They'd never seen anything like that in their life, right?
Great. Oh, that's hysterical.
And then the screen only had 12 buttons on it, and there were never going to be any apps on it.
No.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
There was a whole empty row here. It's like
Steve was adamant.
No more apps. No more apps, and it's certainly not a game. It didn't ship with a game.
It didn't ship with a game.
It did not ship. Yeah, remember the first iPod did. They had a breakout in a secret mode, but
even the
first
Nokia candy bar phones had Snake.
Exactly. Yeah. So when I went to iPhone Dev Camp the week after the iPhone launched, and teamed up with Joe Hewitt, I really liked that mechanic. Now, what was interesting about the iPhone is that it does touch on all of these, four keys. You want, it was that sense of exploration. Like, this is kind of crazy. There's a little bit. I was, a little bit of hard fun. Like, how do it's not quite intuitive how to interact with it. Intuitive to us today because we've learned. And then there was this social thing. Yeah.
I don't think that, by the way, that was unconscious. I know that maybe it wasn't explicit, but Apple always has had these kind of core tenets about affordability, and they've really thought about UI.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that they kind of got it, that we have something that's going to be different and hard to use. We have to make it fun to learn how to use it.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the serious fun of, like, collecting all these little apps, right?
Yeah,
I think that
it's become an addictive device. Little did they know how addictive.
Yeah, and so in Fortnite's case, what happens is that, the people fun, like the competition and some cooperation, and some cooperation too. So in the game, really drives a lot of the play. It happens in a non-fantasy. It's not a super science fiction-y thing, right? It happens in kind of a more rural, very Americana kind of context. And then there's these amusing, what are you using this for, right? All these different
That's an interesting thing. One of the reasons I think Fortnite beat PUBG, both battle royale games, was the amusement in Fortnite that was lacking. PUBG was very almost grim. And also the building mechanics, and that is the serious fun or whatever.
Yeah, well, and if you think about the emotion of people fun, amusement is it.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about amusement functionally in the body, as we talk, like we laugh with each other, right?
Yeah.
And then we feel you have someone who can say can have you rolling on the floor, literally laughing by saying a single word. You probably have someone laughing. All of you probably do too.
Yeah, that's a close relationship.
Yeah, a close relationship, and then you kind of feel after you can breathe again, right? You kind of feel closer to that person.
Yes.
Right. You kind of feel closer to that person, and so so basically there's a functional role that laughter plays. We laugh with people to socially bond us, and then we laugh at other people.
Little Schadenfreude, always
always a good to divide us, right? that releases some oxytocin, and so
the love hormone,
right? We call it the cuddle hormone often. But what's interesting is if you give someone a whiff of oxytocin, you can do it with a nasal spray.
Yeah.
They will feel closer to people they feel close to, and they will also feel more angry or more distant from people that they're separated
It's
from.
about a bonding tribalism.
Yeah, so if they're angry at someone, it's going to amplify anger.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so there's some really fascinating things if you get in on the neurochemical level.
Yeah.
But if we think of what's lovely about games is that we have this ability to create these experiences that are interactive, and even without a pre-built linear linear narrative. And a narrative is there. Stories are there to move us, right? They amplify the emotions we might feel through an empathetic process. Here, through an interactive process, using the 4 keys, you can actually create emotions, on a moment-to-moment basis with your players.